Hi, my name is Chanel Thomas, and I will be presenting on multitasking. Is it a good use of your time? Multitasking, doing two or more things at once or rapidly switching from one task to another, is a characteristic of the millennial generation. One study shows that during a typical week, 81% of young people report media multitasking at least some of the time. Multitasking nicely illustrates our point that motivation is not just effort, but also the way you direct your efforts. However, is the direction of effort in multitasking efficient or inefficient? Many people who multitask say it makes them more efficient. Why not do two things at once if I can accomplish about as much if I only did one thing? They ask. Research, however, shows multitasking is inefficient, that it actually takes longer to do two things at once than to do one thing first and then do the other. David Mayer, a University of Michigan psychologist who has studied multitasking, argues you wind up needing to use the same sorts of mental and physical resources for performing each of the tasks. You're having to switch back and forth between the two tasks as opposed to really doing them simultaneously. Multitasking appears to result in adverse outcomes beyond inefficiency. Another study found multitaskers absorb material more superficially. They notice more things in their environment but are able to learn material less deeply. It's not that they can't focus, says one researcher. It's that they focus on everything. They hear everything, even things they would normally be able to block out because they are now so used to attending to many things at once. Basically, what this is saying is that people who are used to multitasking would try to multitask everywhere. Like, even if you're hanging out with your friends, you would notice things that your friends probably wouldn't notice, and it's like you're not focusing on what you're actually supposed to be doing. So it's like it's a little different for them. So others note that multitasking can damage productivity and social relationships as individuals devote less concentrated time and attention to the task they are working on and conversations they're having, which is what I was just explaining. This scattered attention is especially damaging for tasks that require deep insight and creativity. So another example would be, let's say I'm an accountant. um, if I'm an accountant, that type of work requires you to focus a lot. So it's not wise to multitask as an accountant because mistakes can be easily made and it can have a domino effect on everything else that you do. So if I make one mistake while trying to multitask, let's say in a balance sheet, I'm probably getting the wrong number or something, then it's going to end up backfiring on everything else that I'm doing. So it's better to not multitask when you have a job that really needs you to be focused. Question number one says, do you consider yourself a multitasker? The answer is no. I used to think I was a multitasker, not realizing that I was unable to do two things at the same time without focusing on one thing more than the other. So I think a lot of people think that they're multitaskers when really we're not. So that's my answer. No, I'm not a multitasker. The effects of multitasking have been found to be negative when the tasks are complex. Why do you think in this case? Um, I think it has a negative effect because as someone who that myself, I thought I was multitasking. I thought I was being more productive when in fact I was just using more time than I should trying to do two things at once. However, with a more complex task, it requires more attention and brain power, like the accounting example. Therefore, when trying to do two tasks at once, it negatively affects the actual task that you're given, because they are not being done to the best of your ability, because you're not focusing on the important task. You're trying to do more than one thing, and it's going to mess with your head, basically. Some evidence shows that multitaskers feel more stress in their work, and they feel a constant low-level panic. Do you agree? Why or why not? So I agree with the statement simply because knowing that you have more than one thing to do at the same time will automatically cause a slight panic. Like in the back of your head, you're like, okay, I have more than one thing to do and I have to try and do this and this at the same time, or something like that. It will always cause a slight panic in the back of your head or something. So a multitasker would feel this low level panic because they know that they have to perform more than one task at the same time, and that they have to do it to the best of their ability. And most likely, in most cases, you are being monitored by your employee, and that in itself will cause a slight panic. So one expert recommends we recreate boundaries by training ourselves while doing something not to look at our device, like phones or TV, for increasing periods of time. Do you think you can do that? For how long? So yes, I believe I could do that for however long it is required. Like if I'm given a task and I don't need any distractions, I will do it for however is required, or whatever goal I set for myself. If it's a task that I set for myself, then I will do it. If I set a goal for myself, or if there is a task that needs to be completed, I would naturally put my phone away and focus solely on finishing the task at hand. The same goes for any other device or distraction. It could be TV, it could be my laptop, it could be friends. I like to focus by myself and with no distractions when I have to do something important. So that is nothing for me to do. Basically, it's just a piece of cake. So I focus best alone and without distractions, and these boundaries are already embedded in my lifestyle. So doing this would be a piece of cake. In conclusion, although study shows that multitasking isn't a real thing, some people would still like to think that it is, simply because thinking you're multitasking makes you feel superior, and recruiters, even if it may not be a real thing, recruiters tend to look for that specific characteristic or skill from individuals. So people still claim to be multitaskers, even if they're not actually multitasking. So that concludes my presentation on multitasking. Before this, I actually thought I was a multitasker, but after research, I realized it's basically not a real thing. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy.